Hello, hello, and welcome back to Beyond Chronic Burnout, the podcast that tackles the real challenges of burnout, leadership, and well being with an inclusive approach, especially for neurodivergent and disabled adults, and provides real solutions that work. I'm your host, Carole Jean Whittington, and today we're taking a deep dive into burnout in high achieving women, especially those leading in corporate or entrepreneurial spaces. Joining me today is Abby Calabrese, a superstar consultant and strategist who has dedicated her career to helping professional women thrive while avoiding the pitfalls of burnout. Abby has worked with everyone from Fortune 500 companies to fast paced startups, and she brings her wealth of experience to the table in this episode. Her personal journey navigating the intense demands of leadership and avoiding burnout in the high pressure finance and startup worlds is something so many of us can relate to. We're going to hear about Abby's approach to setting boundaries, prioritizing self care, and building self trust. All essential tools for any woman looking to succeed in leadership without sacrificing her well being. If you've ever felt the strain of doing it all or struggled to find balance in your professional and personal life, this conversation is for you. So sit back, relax, and get ready to hear some fantastic insights that will help you lead with more ease and less burnout. I'm thrilled to welcome Abby to the show today.
Step out of the shadows, feel the power rise, catch the spark inside you, let your spirit fly. Beyond the chronic burnout, Carole Jean's your guide. Find your steady rhythm, life's joy on the tide. Flourish forward, bright and bold. Leave the burnout far behind. In this journey, hearts unfold. Power's yours, seek and find.
Abby Calabrese, thank you so much for being here today. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you because you coach high achieving professional women. And holy cow, when we talk about burnout, this is a whole different ballgame. It really is. The majority of high performing professional women who come and work with me one on one in the unveiling method come in as a ghost pepper level 5. That's the highest degree of heat on the spicy pepper scale in my research in the program.
Yeah.
And they're usually a 10 out of 10 in their degree of heat. However, they are working full time. They are wifing, they are momming, they are partnering, they are volunteering in their local community, and they're going home and doing a lot of things you and I talked about, which you're going to share to navigate and manage this. And they just keep powering through. Abby, what has been, because I know you were in corporate, you've made some shifts. What has been your experience as a high achieving professional woman yourself hitting burnout? What was that like? What did it feel like? I mean, did you even know it was burnout? I mean, did you dismiss it and call it something else for a long time? How long was that? This is like, give us all the juice, give us all the goodness here, because I know there's a lot of people out there going, I don't know if this is burnout. I'm not sure.
I know. And I'm so happy to be here talking about this because this is something I'm obviously really, really passionate about. But yeah, I think it's just hard to understand what's going on in the moment. So like you said, I in the corporate America, I'm getting those, titles, I'm getting the salary bumps, I'm getting the things that I think I've been going after my whole life, right? And so why would I get a little bump, feel pretty good and then just end up in this feeling again? And so automatically my first thing is there's something wrong with me. So like I need to search and figure this out and I'm not managing this well. Everybody else can manage it well, but I can't. And just being really, really hard on myself, which wasn't helping in the overall situation either. But how it looked for me was I would actually get very, very emotional. So I'm not typically a really emotional person, but when I'm in the heat of burnout, even the smallest little thing will kind of set me off. And so I just thought that there's, again, something wrong with me and I'm not able to control it, or, compare yourself to everybody else and everybody on social media. They all seem to have it together. And I just felt like I couldn't handle what was going on. But once you dig down into it a little bit, it's like, well, you have so much going on and you just keep taking on more and more. But I really wasn't taking care of myself in the process of all of that.
And I know you've had some pretty powerful, big, hot positions. I mean, you were doing some big real estate stuff for some
Yeah.
television shows. I mean, some
Yeah.
big stuff here. How did you, in that environment? I mean, that's a pretty high stakes, really fast paced. I mean, first you're talking about television and media, and then you're talking about real estate. I mean, this is all high speed stuff. How did that pressure start to show up for you? I mean, other than like the really big emotional part, because like me, I would hold it together and then I would get just like bawling. And I'm just like, why am I crying?
I
There's no
know, I
reason to
know.
cry, right? But how did that like start to show up for you?
Yeah, I would take it all on myself. So I kind of thought I can, fix everything. I can,
Oh,
the
right.
right, because of course, right? Or just the more I worked, or if I just tried harder, or if and that would come into play with, startups. So I was in corporate America, working at a financial software company. I was there for 10 years. And then I switched over to the startup world, which actually was like just kryptonite for my personality, because in corporate America, I was kind of bored, to be honest. And startup world was the opposite. They're like, you want to do more? You want to wear more hats? Oh, you can wear all the hats. And so with my personality, it was just like, okay, I'll just keep doing more and more and more and more, not being very good at setting those boundaries. And then boom, I would kind of like hit the wall. Um, so it was definitely hard not having kind of the hard and fast true rules of what your role is. That kind of, I think, led to a lot more severe cases of kind of burnout. And I would just continue that cycle with each startup I worked at, each executive position I got was just, okay, I'll just take on more, both emotionally, the actual work itself, it wasn't my company, but I was operating as if it was. I mean, I was just really full, all the way in, but that wasn't necessarily the best for me personally.
Oh, how I can relate to everything you just said.
Yeah.
And I can guarantee you, we've got some women on the other side listening to you and I have this conversation going, "Oh yeah, that's where I am right now."
I
I
know.
have I am wearing all the hats, I have onboarded all the stuff, and it is a really different environment from, like, traditional corporate organizational structure to that venture capital and those really, like, emerging groups. It's kinda loose and everybody so fluid because everybody's so used to just playing loose and fast, and it's like diving into whatever's on fire at the moment, and there really isn't structure in the way that a lot of times we need it to be, especially if we don't have any boundaries ourselves, and I know that's something you and I are gonna dive into.
Exactly. Yep.
And I think one of the most important parts, kind of one of the keys that you brought up that you were willing to share in this conversation, and I thank you so much because, I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
Right there with you. And it's when we're not recognizing that we have sustained this long-term level of stress and we have moved into different degrees of burnout. Because sometimes we've been at, let's say, a level 3 cayenne pepper burnout for so long that it's become our norm. It's our
Exactly.
new set point. So until there's enough fires raging that we're having to run around and put out and we don't have enough resources to keep up with it, and we move into a deeper degree of burnout, let's say that level 4 habanero, or maybe you slip straight and just like drive straight into that ghost pepper level 5, and things are starting to even shut down, but you're ignoring them in your physical body because you don't have time.
Right.
That doesn't feel safe, right? And so the in betweens between lunches and dropping everybody off at school and get everything done, and then coming home and trying to like get everything rounded up as you put everybody in bed and you have a moment to sit down, you grab a glass of wine. You grab
Mhm.
the nearest thing to kind of just numb it all down because your brain is going 900 miles an hour. Your anxiety in your body is up here. And then it becomes this go-to solution. How does that, I mean, I'm so just describing myself right here.
I think you're probably describing a lot of people.
How did that
Yeah.
happen? I mean, how did you start to recognize that's what was going on for you, Abby? Because that's a big one.
Yeah, it was slow. So I mean, history with alcohol is pretty much similar to, I would say, most people, college and after college and social, all of that. I didn't even have alcohol in my apartments. I lived in New York for 10 years. It just wasn't a thing. It would go out, you know what I mean? That sort of thing. But as my positions grew, as the stress levels grew, as I had kids, and I used to always joke once we had my first, my son Jack, you're home, he goes to sleep, but you have to stay home. So I called it baby jail. I'm like, well, we're stuck in baby jail. So, let's-
Oh
you
my
would then
God.
open up and have a glass of wine. And so it was kind of like it starts slow as it always does. But then I found myself, a stressful day at work. Again, you're kind of stuck, I have a little baby, everything. Well, I can have a glass of wine. And it's that instantaneous kind of feeling of, oh, this is kind of numbing a little bit. It's relieving that anxiety. It's just making it better, just even for that little bit. And that's what I really realized over time was it's just that little bit, and that's it. But alcohol is an addictive substance. And so you need more, 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 more. And it's just addictive in its nature. So before I knew it, I was having 2 glasses of wine, 3 glasses of wine. I was having trouble sleeping. Wasn't feeling good. I was irritable. It was just kind of having all of these negative side effects. And I wasn't really putting together the two because it's such a socially acceptable thing, right? You see people having a glass of wine as they're cooking. It's like, oh, I just need that glass of wine at the end of the day. People openly talk about this. It's not like this, whatever. And so it was really hard to put it together. And I actually had this moment where I pour a glass of wine. I was just feeling awful. Pour a glass of wine, and I just look at the wine, and I'll never forget this moment. And I'm just like, this is causing more issues. Like, this is it. And so from that point on, I actually did like a challenge. I was like, I just want to do 100 days, no alcohol, and see how I feel. Like, no, don't not make it any bigger than that. And I mean, it was life
No
changing.
bigger than that. Listen to you, like, go big or go home here.
Yeah.
100 days. Come on. I'm thinking like 2 weeks, 30 days.
Well, I didn't want to do it too short, and I didn't want to do
Right.
too long. You know what I mean? So I was like, I needed to commit to it. So I really knew how I felt.
I love this about you.
Oh, of course. Like, please. I overdo everything. So of course I'm gonna like overdo this. And
That's relate at all.
yeah. So yes, I mean, at those 100 days, I felt so good along the way. And it was hard at first because it's a habit. So the same way, you know what I mean? So I just had to replace with like something else, an NA beverage or something like that. But as the habit started to release a little bit, I almost instantaneously was sleeping better, felt so much better. My anxiety was a lot lower. It was a pretty remarkable difference. And so when 100 days came around, it was kind of a no-brainer that I was going to continue it on.
Oh man. It's so interesting. And I love that you shared this. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Because it's really when we can find just the one thing that we can start with. Like for you, it was like, I'm just going to put down wine for 100 days and just see what happens.
Yeah.
For me, it was, I'm going to cut out all the wheat and the sugar, and I'm just going to slowly do it, and I'm just going to see what happens. And it's just like when we can find that one sort of that linchpin, and we start to get a little bit more sleep, or we start to feel a little better in our body and our mind, like we get some clearer thinking, we just feel a little bit more energy in there, then that seems to lead to the next thing, and that next step in awareness through that reflection, right? That we
Mhm.
do is we reflect on things. We're like, let me see what's the contrast here, right? So I could get a little clarity on where I want to go next. And
Yeah.
it's those one little thing that we can start with that we can then go, oh, now I see the next thing. So once you did that 100 days, you were starting to sort of feel differently, sleep differently. What was the next thing for you, Abby?
Yeah, I mean, the clarity alone just made me realize I can handle what's gonna come my way. So I think I was using the alcohol in this case as a crutch, and I feel like I would put myself out there, but then kind of bring myself back down with the alcohol, and by removing it, it's like I'm more vulnerable, I'm more out there, I'm more exposed, but in the best way possible, if that makes sense. So, I'm dealing with all these feelings and emotions that before was just kinda like, I have a drink, and it just kind of, like, blurred everything a little bit. Now it's, like, in vivid color. So, it's just kinda brought on a lot of, I would say, just clarity. I mean, I feel like I can't think of, like, a better way to put it, but I can be more present. I have a lot more clarity on what I want out of life. And I feel like a lot of people get stuck. Like that's a lot of my clients I talk to feel stuck for whatever reason. It could be I did, this degree, I did this graduate degree, I have all these student loans still. I hate my job. I hate what I'm doing, but I already invested all of this, so I'm stuck. And what I can say is once I got that clarity, I'm just able to see that like you're never really truly stuck. Even when you're in the worst of ways, there's always a path forward to get to where you wanna go, but you have to be able to get clear on where you wanna go.
Yes. And I feel like for me, it's been the clarity comes through the messy action. Just actually, the biggest shift was like, I was like, okay, there's four different paths here. I can choose one of these four paths, and I'm just going to operate on the understanding that all four of them are going to work. I just have to choose the one that feels most aligned with me, the one that feels like the path of least resistance, the path
Yeah.
that feels the best, the lightest, in the sense that it doesn't feel heavy or like it's hard work. It feels good,
Yeah.
right? But that really kind of takes some checking in, some vulnerability, and
Mhm.
some faith and trust in yourself, which a lot of times I think when we've been on that corporate cycle and in that grind culture, we have gotten under this guise of I have to do all of these things in order for me to be successful, for me to feel safe, for me to trust that all things are going in the right direction. And so to stand sort of at that crossroads and go, okay, I got a little clarity now. I'm going to choose one of these paths. I'm not actually stuck. Now, I got this degree, I got this job, still paying off all the student loan debt and all the stuff, right? And so it feels heavy in that moment when we feel like we don't have options. But there's infinite potentialities. We just don't always see them because it isn't comfortable.
Whenever you
How do
said
we start
trust
to
yourself.
move?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you said trust yourself, that was like the biggest aha moment for me because I feel
Oh,
like going back to the alcohol, but I could use other examples as well. There was always this underlying lack of trust in myself, this fear. And I was really kind of living and making decisions and everything out of fear. Money was never something that we had a ton of. I had so many student loans. I was living in one of the most expensive cities in the world. I was terrified of not having enough money. So a lot of the different decisions I made, what I majored in college, what jobs I took, what decisions I made with my career, even setting boundaries, I was too scared. And that kind of then cycled that I didn't then trust myself to take care of myself. Going back to the alcohol, didn't trust myself. Like, I would wake up and feel a lot of shame for drinking too much. And I'd be like, well, you did that to yourself. And it was just this like negative self talk and critical. And what I found is even if it's the smallest step, take it. Running is an example. I had never run before in my life, but I think it was 2013, I just was like, I'm just going to go run. Like, I just was having a really hard time. I was, so burnout. I didn't even have running shoes. I put on my Converse and I went outside of my building and just started walking to the point where I was walking so fast I started running. I was like, I guess this is it. I'm running now. But that led to just me, got running shoes and started doing more and more. And it was time that I spent with myself. It was something that I could feel proud of for myself. And I would just encourage people to just take even the smallest step, even if you don't have the running shoes. Just do something that's just for you that you can look at and be like, that's just for me. That's not for anybody else. That's not for any perception or anything like that. And it just starts to build this pathway of trust and pride in yourself. And it builds this muscle that is going to allow you to take some of these, calculated risks and leaps to get you to the place that you ultimately want to be.
Oh, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Absolutely. That is such a great insight to share with everybody. Abby, thank you for that. So from this place of sort of starting to build some trust, starting to get a little levity, a little energy coming in just through picking that one thing and just going, okay, I'm just going to see how this changes how I feel. But at this point, you're still working in the job that's sucking the life out of you. You're still in the grind culture of like all the external validation stuff, right? Because that's
Mhm.
the world we live in this social world where it's all this external validation. How do you shift from that? How did you begin to step out without really just throwing yourself into total panic mode when it came to like finances and some stability and all the stuff that we got running all the time in our heads? Because that's huge, because there's a lot of people that are listening to this series this month going, okay, this is not working, right? I've been at this job where I'm now at a new company, maybe it was a lateral move. And it's a lot of times what I have found, and in my own experience, was I was blaming the job for my burnout.
Yeah.
I was saying it's the job is causing the burnout, but I had to finally look at it and own it. And it was me. It was me. I was experiencing burnout everywhere I went, no matter what I did, because it was me.
Yep. 100%. I thought it was the job
And
too.
that's a bitter pill.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
a really bitter pill to swallow.
Everywhere I go, there I am, right? So it was every single job. And I was like, well, it's this CEO, it was this manager, it was this. And it was like, okay, after what, the fifth one? What is going on here? So yeah, so there, I would say when you say like, how do I even start?
Yeah.
Definitely small. But for me, I had to rewire how I thought.
Unlock your schedule for success and harmony. As we dive into quarter four, are you feeling the pressure to wrap up the year on a high note? With KPIs to meet and goals to complete, it can feel like your time is slipping through your fingers, leaving little room for what truly matters. Now, add in the hustle and bustle of the upcoming holidays, more social events, family gatherings, and endless demands. Imagine having the tools to take charge of your day and align your professional and personal goals. Introducing Optimize Your Schedule for Work Life Success and Harmony, a 2-day interactive workshop designed just for leaders like you. I understand the unique challenges you face this season. juggling leadership responsibilities while managing projects efficiently during the busiest time of year. In this workshop, you'll discover improved decision making skills to refine your schedule, enhanced delegation techniques for better task management, strategies to regain control over your daily routine, insights into overcoming that internal resistance that affects your energy and relationships. Join us and walk away with a personalized plan that brings clarity and focus to your life, allowing you to finish the year strong. Ready to transform how you approach each day, even amidst the holiday chaos? Find out more and start your journey towards a harmonious work life experience. Click the link in the description to register today or go to whittingtonwellbeing.com.
How I thought about myself, how I thought about career, because like I said, everything was coming from this place of fear. Um, and I could go all into why that is and everything, but I walk people through in my methodology. There's this whole section that goes back to childhood and kind of why do we think the way that we think? And why do I operate in these ways? And where is this coming from? And I think first understanding that and having empathy for that and compassion for yourself and just opening your eyes to all of it, then you can start to make small changes to rewire. So it's kind of like those habits or neural pathways that you need. They need just like, building muscle, they need that muscle memory of going through it. So it's starting to, if you're burnout and you're in this job, but for financial reasons, or it could be a whole slew of reasons, can't leave the job. It's probably not the job anyways, but let's just say you can't leave the job. I would say start with setting boundaries. That would be one. And if I had another one, I would say also pursue something just for yourself outside of work, outside of your home.
Oh, that's so good.
Yes, it's
Mm.
amazing. My type A, high achieving, I mean, even, my sobriety was even like 100 days. Da, 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 da. So you can understand if someone said to me, get a hobby, I would be like, get out of here. Like, I just thought it was so frivolous. I was like, hobby? Like, what am I? Like a 11-year-old boy? I don't need a hobby. You need a hobby.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so you gotta spill the tea here. What was your hobby choice?
Well, so it's kind of shifted over time. But early on, it was the running. I went on to then run the New York City Marathon. So it's like, again, you can kind of see my personality here. But
I love it. I love it.
it changes over time right in this moment. So I can swim to the point where I can I'll survive if I'm in water. I can tread water, I can doggy paddle, but I can't like swim laps and I don't have the breathing down. And our gym here has an outdoor lap pool. And I'm like, I just want to be able to swim laps for exercise and get the breathing down. So I'm going to take swimming lessons. So that's just for me. That's something, and I'm going to feel so good about myself once I can do it. And then I'm going to have this new skill and it's going to like overall be so that's just one example that's currently going on in my life. It's always kind of changing, but just something like that makes you focus away from work, away from the home life, just for you is so incredibly important. I also have all the statistics to back this up because again, the previous me, 10 years ago would have been like, I don't think so. But there are statistics around all the benefits of this, from money to titles to leadership to awards and accolades. So it's definitely, a proven tactic that works.
Well, when we're talking about our nourishment keys, and there's 30 basic nourishment keys, and when they are undernourished, then we are feeling an energy depletion and a drain that's causing an imbalance within our energy experience.
Yeah.
And what's really amazing is in my research over the last 3.5 years in this global spicy research study, number 6 on the list is play and joy. And of course, there was ookaboodles of research into the effects of play in our life.
Yeah.
And I love that you talk about these different things. So I was not a runner. I was an athlete, so I played all kinds of sports, but I was not a runner. And at 42, like you. I was like, I'm just going to try it. Worst shape of my life. I could barely stand up. I mean, I had really horrible health condition happening.
Oh,
And I was like, I'm just going to walk to the mailbox and back. Because at that point, that was all I could do.
yep.
And the next thing I know, I'm going to the New Balance store, getting fitted for running shoes, and I'm running 5Ks. And, it's
Yes,
like getting
exactly.
in. But it's one of those things where you were talking about it. I was so relating. It became this time for me. And it was, I guess the ADHD side of my brain was like, I like the rhythm,
Yeah.
of being on the pavement and that vibration through my body. And it sort of calmed my nervous system. It was sort of like my version of tapping, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And it's just, and there's just these different things, but it doesn't have to be huge. That's the thing. It's, and especially for us overachieving type A folks,
Yeah.
we are all go or no.
Yes.
And so we feel like it has to be these really big, giant, monstrous things, which is why I teach the micro recharge lab. There's things you can do with 2 minutes that
Yep.
completely change your state and your experience. And it's like, if you just find that one little thing, right? It goes into sort of like that appreciative rest and recharging. How do we just find like 2 minutes of something that I just want to really just hold a moment of intention to acknowledge something that's really beautiful? That in itself completely transforms how we're feeling. And if it's a hobby, sometimes I started crocheting. So I crochet for everybody that has a baby because I can't do patterns, but I can do a square. So,
Little blanket.
I'll just, right, I just do a little square blanket. So, I mean, I'll just crochet for 5 or 10 minutes. And I call them like these little micro recharges. That's
Yes.
all it is. But you do those throughout your day, and these little windows can, darn good and well, when you put your tennis shoes on to walk around the building or go up and down the stairwell during lunch or before lunch, it changes. And it doesn't have to be
Mhm.
huge. You've got the time.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't know if you feel like this, but sometimes my best ideas come to me in the shower.
Oh,
And
yes.
because you're away from all of the things, you're finally by
Yep.
yourself. And if you think about it, how many other times during your day do you get that? So make your own shower time. You don't have to shower like 10 times a day, but whatever that may mean for you, right? So if it's stepping outside into your backyard, if it's putting on something quick to listen to, I just my whole mood will change with music. So picking a song, something that'll bring back a memory or invoke some kind of feeling. So I have like a whole bunch that I can pull from now, as where before I think I just was kind of in this like deer in headlights panic mode and I'd freeze.
Yeah.
So it's like kind of having that toolbox there for you to be like, I know this feeling now. I got to reach in here and I only have 5 minutes. So I'm reaching in this one versus, this evening is free. So I'm going to go do my crocheting or my swimming or whatever that might be. And then that might give you even more of a lasting impact. But just understanding, first of all, what you're feeling, why you're feeling it. And then, I know what that is. I'm going to pick that tool out because I know that that is going to help me. And that tool isn't going to harm me as versus the other things that I understand are kind of more the unhealthy coping mechanisms.
Definitely. So, Abby, as a high performance women's leadership coach, what would you say to the woman that is nodding her head? She has sat here in this conversation going, oh my Lord, this is me. This is what I need. But around boundaries at work as a leader, if you've been giving, if you haven't had a whole lot of boundaries because it has been that dopamine hit from all the external validation, but you're recognizing that's what's killing you
Yeah.
at the moment, how do we start to make that shift as a leader in that leadership position when we're in the job, but we know we've got to start putting in boundaries? Where do we start? Because this can be a really tough.
Yeah, I was terrified. I'll be honest. I was just like, if I set boundaries, I'm going to get fired. If I get fired, I'm not going to have any money. I'm not going to be able to pay my rent. I mean, that's exactly what I would go to. So I was like, this is just what I have
Mine
to
was
do.
like, everybody's going to call me the B word.
Yeah,
Because they're going to think I'm like coming in guns a-blazing kind of thing. But I thought, I didn't come in guns a-blazing, but to me, it felt like it.
Everyone's going to hate me. I'm going to get fired. I'm going to have to pay my rent. Yeah.
They're
But yeah,
gonna think I'm slacking and I don't want to do my job.
right, right. Well, I actually it's funny you say that too. So I have an Instagram account. It's Abby Calabrese. And I put on there phrases where how you can set boundaries without being rude. Because I think, I kind of really did some introspection and figuring out where is this fear coming from? Sure, there's the fear of, getting fired, all of that. But like deep down, I didn't want to come across as rude. I didn't want people not to like me. And I think it goes back to childhood. Little girl, need to be polite, and the idea of being like, I don't have time for that this evening, or I'm not going to be able to make that, or I would love to suggest this other person who would be able to do that, or I'd be happy to facilitate. This is what I have on my plate, and we're going to have to decide out of these three things. Like I can, one can get done today, not three or whatever. So I really had to untrain my brain from thinking that that was rude and I wasn't being polite to I was being realistic. It's like at the end of the day, my boss, manager, the owner of the company, whoever I was working for, it would be way worse for me to completely burn out and quit or, you know what I mean, not be able to handle it, than say, this is what I'm able to handle and I'm going to do these excellent for you. But this third one, I'm like confident that XYZ is how we could handle it instead. You should have the confidence in where you are in your role to be able to address it in that way and give that guidance and kind of manage the situation. But it takes time and it takes practice and it takes that understanding and trust in yourself to be able to handle those situations.
And it definitely requires some support, some community, someone who can mentor or coach you through this process. It is not, I did it solo because I wasn't smart enough to look outside of myself for a
Yeah.
long time. And so it took me probably twice as long as it would have had
Ugh,
I thought to go, oh, let me go find somebody to help navigate this, right?
yeah. Yeah.
And I know you help women navigate this in
Mhm.
high executive level positions. So, Abby, how do people reach out to you? How do they work with you? How do they get started if somebody is listening to this conversation going, yep, that is what I need today?
Yeah. Well, the best thing is to go to my website. So it's abbycalabrese.com. I have a couple different ways that you can work with me. I have an online course where you're able to go through each of my 10 modules and kind of do it self-led and all on your own time. The other thing is we can do one-on-one coaching. And so that's where I really work with you hands-on. We do these types of things, understand, where we need to dig a little bit, the understanding of the why and kind of that deeper work. But when you say like the practicing and having a mentor to do it, it just helps. It's just that extra support and community and understanding that you deserve to, you know what I mean? That validation of, am I thinking of this in
Oh,
the right
yeah.
way? And sometimes you can have that at your workplace, but sometimes you aren't fortunate to have that. And that's when coaches really, I think, step up and fill that role.
Absolutely. We're going to have all the links down in the show notes below. So if you're part of the Unveilers community, stick around. Abby's going to go behind the scenes with us and we're going to have a strategic conversation around what the heck to do if we're in a leadership position and we need to change where we're working. Stick around. Thanks, guys. See you next time. Abby, you up for that conversation?
Yeah.
I usually choose one person for our November conversation, and you are my girl. This was such a
Awesome.
great conversation. I'm like, no, we got to go deeper on this
Oh,
one
good.
because we have a lot of women leaders in our Unveilers community, and I think this
Yeah.
would just be such a great conversation. Okay,
Yeah.
so
For
here we
sure.
go. Okay, Abby, we're here. We're talking to our Unveilers today. Oh my gosh, what happens when we are burnt out and we've realized, okay, it's us, but at the same time, it's also not just me. It is my environment. It is where I'm working. It is who I'm working with. This has gone like beyond the hustle toxic part. This is just not a good environment. And if I'm going to get out of burnout, if I'm going to really grow and navigate my career, the heck do we start this? Where do we go? Because I mean, there's a lot of fear that comes up with this,
Yeah.
right? And especially when we're looking at right now, I think it's 7.5 to 8 months or more to go from where you are to the next position.
Yeah.
So what are some things that you would suggest? How does a woman who is in a leadership position right now that goes, this is not going to work, how do we start to shift to make that change?
Yeah, so I mean, there's definitely you can almost branch it off into two different directions. If it's going to be you want to go somewhere else and want a different role, that's going to be handled in one way. But if you're interested in staying with the company, either in the same role or another one, but you want to remain there, and I'll handle that one first. I think it's first and foremost getting very, very clear on what it is you can handle, what's required of the job, and then seeing what falls out, what kind of spills over the bucket from there. So you don't
Ooh, I
want to get
like that visual. What
yeah.
spills over the bucket? You got to create the container though, because I think most of us show up and we've got like the flatbed truck,
Mhm.
not the bucket.
I'm so guilty of this, right? So it's first of all, I'm so excited usually when I get into a new role. Not usually, always, right? I wouldn't have taken it.
Always
So
dopamine hit for days.
yes, exactly. So I'm like, give me everything. I can do all of this. I want that validation. I want to be, praised and all. Who doesn't, right? So you take on, take on, take on until you realize this is not sustainable. So that's where you need to get very, very clear on, okay, what are the parameters that fit in this role?
Okay,
Easier
how
said
do
than
we
done.
how do we do that, right? Because that
Exactly.
is easier said than done. I
Exactly.
mean,
That's
what
what's
do
true.
you suggest? Like, how do you start with that? Do you find somebody in a lateral role in the same company and start maybe looking at how they're operating? What do you suggest to kind of start to create the container?
Yeah. So I think it's easier in some ways and not in other ways. So like a corporate role is probably the easiest because usually they have it all detailed out, job description, your level of pay, who you report. It's just crystal
Go
clear.
back to your contract.
Exactly, exactly. I kind of picture it like the grid in New York City. It's like, okay, here are the number of the streets, here are the avenues, and boom, right? But then if you go, to lower Manhattan, it's all the, roads start going, they're all named, and you're like, where am I? So that would be more like startup world or, something that just doesn't have as clear definition. And so in that case, what I would do is just talk to your manager, talk to people that are in the role with somebody who was previously in that role. Are they available on LinkedIn? Are they still at the company? Look at similar companies and talk to somebody else that's in a role. So you have to do a little bit of research more in like kind of that startup world than you would in corporate, but it is going to be the research around, okay, what really is in this container that is understood to be part of my role? And then have an honest conversation. Am I able to handle this? And I think that's kind of your first starting point of,
That's a really great question. Am I able to handle this? I would layer in also as, do I want to?
right.
Do I want to? Because there's a lot of things I can do that I don't necessarily want to do.
Right. And it all goes into right. So if ultimately you're like, I mean, it's hard when you're interviewing and you get kind of the best of the best up front and everybody's, wants to sell you on the position and you're so excited. But once you're in it, you really see it for what it is. And I think that it's okay if it's like this isn't what I thought it was or and you just have to have that very, very honest conversation with yourself around, is this manageable for me? Is this sustainable? Is it what I want to do? I would do all of that before even thinking of having a conversation around setting boundaries because it's just not going to go well if you don't have that.
If you don't know what you want first, because
But
then we're
it's
just kind of like back in the same undefined area again, because everybody's going to continue to define your bucket for you, which may be a
yeah.
barrel or something bigger than you want,
But think about
which
it.
is never easy.
No, but you're upset, you're burnout, you're looking for help, whatever. So a lot of people would go to their manager and just be like, this is too much. And, da, da, da. And what's the next question they're going to ask is like, well, what parts or what? And so just being able to take a step back, and this is all part of that, like trusting yourself and building that confidence, even going into that conversation, do your homework. This is where I'm comfortable with. Or if it's not, maybe it's having that honest conversation with them. Like, this is more than I was anticipating, and specifically these roles, if there's a way that we could, offload those to someone else, like I want to have this open and honest conversation with you, knowing that it might be something that you would eventually need to be switching out of that role. Maybe there's another role at the company that fits better with what you want to be doing. But I think the worst thing is just to, suffer through it, and you're going to end up burning out, and it's probably not going to be a great way to leave the company or part ways or anything like that. So getting ahead of it when you start to feel that way, doing the research. And then if it is, here's what fits in my role, but they keep stacking all this other stuff on top of it, then you can go in with a very clear, this is what we agree to. This is the role that I'm in. These are the understandable activities. All of this, we're going to need to find somebody else, to be able to handle it. And I'm happy to train them. I'm happy to help with the selection, always offering that, help with the next step. But that just shows that you have authority over the position, the role, your understanding of the role. And then you're already setting that boundary.
I think too, it's like sometimes we forget when our bucket starts to get stacked with other things coming in, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just if we can recognize it and go, okay, wait a minute, this actually means we're growing. We have more things coming in, or this is a really great opportunity. Let's make sure that this isn't extra things being added into my bucket because something isn't streamlined. We need to look at the process of what's going on, right?
Process improvement. Could be you
Yeah.
need to hire additional people. Could be, actually somebody out, like it could be identifying a weak link. Like it could be a million things, but you just kind of keeping quiet about it and doing it and whatever that's not going to ultimately benefit anybody.
No, but that's usually the default.
It's a
Right?
scary conversation to have. And I don't know, sometimes I have to channel and be like, what would a man do in this situation? Right. And it would be a very frank, hey, I don't think this is part of my role. Right.
Or I think it's time we hire somebody for this.
Yeah. It's like,
This is
I don't think
consistent enough. It's time for somebody else.
right. I don't
We're
think this is
growing.
anything. Yeah. It's just so like, blah, blah, blah. I'm not there. That's just not my style. Maybe I will be someday. I don't think so. I don't even know if that's where I eventually want to be, but I like to go in with, I've thought this through. I have the plan. I know what it is I want. And that's usually where I have the most meaningful conversations.
I love that. So if we have a female executive who's sitting there here going, okay, so I've defined that. I've now discovered that this just is not a good fit. This is not a good organizational fit for me. I need to look elsewhere. Where is the first place or how to begin that process, especially if you've been in this role for a while?
Yeah. So when looking for my next step or, next direction that I want to go in, again, I'm going to go back to the research. So really understanding the last thing I want to do is get in the same exact thing again, right? Because you already know that doesn't. So really understanding, okay, what is it that I like? What is it that I don't like? And then coming together with the questions. You're almost going to like interview the other people to see what those types of roles are like at where they're at. So then I just start my outreach to my network, people on LinkedIn, and I don't focus on like, oh, these jobs are listed, so I'm going to, go after that, because we know it takes a long time. And usually by the time the job's listed, who even knows, what's going on with the position. I go after like the company. So I really respect what they're doing at this company or this industry. And this is, close to where I live, or I know somebody that works there and they've said really great things or whatever it might be. But start doing your research at a higher level, making those connections, having those important conversations around whatever it might be, culture, how they operate, their dynamic. I mean, I talked to somebody who she was just like, the shift from this company to this company, they work so fast. It's like a whirlwind. She's like, I didn't even know that this could like happen. The whole company is just like, and she's like, this is not a great fit. So kind of trying to get as much of
Right.
that ahead of time. And then networking. And a lot of times then you're kind of on their radar for when stuff might come up, and it just creates a little bit of a smoother process with the transition. That way you're not just kind of going into this void of throwing your application around, and it's really discouraging, and it just kind of allows you to take a little bit more of a tactical approach.
I love that so much. Abby, if there's one thing you would like to share with somebody who is a burnout executive trying to just navigate, realizing that this is not necessarily how I want to show up for this particular role, or just really stepping into a new place of trusting myself and starting with some boundaries, what's that one piece of advice you'd like to share before we go today?
Be kind to yourself.
Oh, yes.
It just made a world of difference. You can do all the things. You can join every single, fitness and diet and just be kind to yourself and know that you're showing up. You are trying. You are, doing great things. Look around at all the stuff to be grateful for. I was just talking about it after this weekend. We had just, a great weekend celebrating. My son just turned 6. And on Monday morning, it was a chaotic morning trying to get the kids out of the house to school. The house was a disaster. I just started to feel like, ugh. But I just took a second, opened up my camera roll, and just saw all the memories from the weekend and all those happy faces. And I'm never going to look back and be like, oh, but the living room was a mess that morning or whatever. Just be easy on yourself. And it's not all going to look perfect. It's not meant to. Trust that you're going to be able to figure it out. Take small steps. And you got it.
I love that. And no one lives in an Architectural Digest magazine. I was heartbroken to discover that, but it also gave me a lot more latitude in my mess.
I know. I just have containers for the mess now. I'm like, that's a cute wicker basket, and it has a lid. So
There we go. There we go. Thanks so much for being here, Abby. Thanks for sharing this conversation with us. Hey, Unveilers, we're going to dive into this, and we're going to go in some breakout rooms and talk a little bit more about how we can start navigating this area of boundaries and trust and setting some containers. Thank you so much for joining us today on Beyond Chronic Burnout. I hope you feel energized and ready to take on the challenges ahead. Remember, you are not alone in this journey. Let's stay connected. Go follow me over on Instagram at Carole Jean Whittington, where you can join our Beyond Chronic Burnout channel for personal messages from me each week, and subscribe to the podcast for more conversations and burnout insights. Together, we'll continue to break out of burnout and unlock our authentic selves. Until next time, this is Carole Jean Whittington signing off. Stay compassionately curious, my friends.
Thanks for being here. It's been quite a ride. Energy mastery, let's turn the tide. Top shelf guests, dropping wisdom bombs. Join us next week, where the energy's strong. Beyond chronic burnout, we're breaking free. Podcast pumping full of energy, tips and tricks to boost your vibe. Fast pace and fun, you'll feel alive. Energy mastery, come along for the ride. Beyond chronic burnout, we're on the rise. Join us next week for more top shelf guests. Tapping into energy, we're at our best. Thanks for being here. It's been quite a ride. Energy mastery, let's turn the tide. Top shelf guests, dropping wisdom bombs. Join us next week, where the energy's strong. Beyond Chronic